Welcome to Latent Treasures, a uniquely uplifting podcast filled with inspiring guests to brighten your week. Our show takes inspiration from a lesser-known quote from C.S. Lewis. What we want is not more little books about Christianity, but more little books by Christians on other subjects, with their Christianity latent. While I love books, this is 2020. And let's face it, audio is a lot easier to produce. But you are more than welcome to think of our little podcast as a bunch of little books about various topics lived by ordinary people. But these people are quite extraordinary in the way their faith drives them and fuels their journey. Journeys on which they're making profound impacts on everyone around them. We hope you'll be blessed by these stories and recognize that inside each of us is the ability to be similarly extraordinary. If you like our show, please subscribe. And if you find any individual show special, please like it and share it freely. How many of you remember the television show from way back in the 80s called 8 is Enough? I may be giving a little too much insight into my growing age, as if my gray hair didn't do that for me already. But today, we enjoy a real-life example of that sort of craziness. Mike Wise joins us again and has brought with him his whole family, including his wonderful wife and their 4 kids, as well as their story of being a foster family, or a resource family as some areas choose to call it. Their family of 6 was often a family of 8 or more, as they cared for and continue to care for children, and especially sibling sets that need a loving home during some really trying times. This was our first chance to record and share with you the perspective of the kids of a foster family who have been immersed in the foster role for over 10 years now. We found out what it was like to share their parents and siblings with the kids who came to them from all kinds of different backgrounds and of all ages and locations. This was a very fun conversation, and I think you'll find it wonderfully engaging as well. As always, we thank Cheyenne Summers and Mary Rogers for their continued efforts in being our art contributors. Their links and info can be found in our complete show notes on bethechurch.org. There you may also leave comments or recommendations that you might have for nominations of potential future guests. Other comments are welcome as well. We'd love to hear from you. But now, without further ado, please welcome back the Wise family: Kristen, Mike, Mackenzie, Harrison, Jackson, and Dawson. All right, well, I want to welcome back Mike Wise and his most of his entire family. We had a straggler get lost in the woods on the way, but I hear he's doing well, so that's good. Mike, we had on earlier, he shared his kind of life story and how he developed his business and everything, but while we were talking with Mike, he had explained that one of his children was actually the trigger for getting his family to go into foster care and the foster care ministry actively as a family. And I desperately wanted to know the kid side of the story, what that experience was like, what made that decision happen, etc. So I've gathered them all here today, including his wife, Kristen, and love for you guys to introduce yourselves.
Mom, you want to start?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were starting with Dad. I'm Kristen Wise.
Should I go next?
Probably.
Okay, I'm Mackenzie McGill, the first daughter, only daughter, oldest child, I guess, is what that means.
Wow, so many titles. Okay,
I have all the titles.
My name is Harrison Wise. I am second born, oldest boy, and debatably the best looking child.
He just wanted to say that on the record. Well, my name is Jackson Wise. Dang it, I messed up. We'll just take it easy then. I'm Jackson Wise. I am the third child and the middle boy.
And I'm Mike Wise, and I'm responsible for all of these people.
Awesome. And so we're missing Dawson, the youngest and fourth child.
Yes, sir. And the free-spirited one.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And as of right now, you are all, you want to share your ages, children?
Sure. I'm just about 27.
27. All right. So this is about 10 years of history we're working on now since this all
Wow,
got
yeah.
started, right? So, okay. So
I guess
27.
so.
I'm 25.
I'm almost 23.
Awesome. And that makes Dawson roughly 21.
Yeah, we all
Yes.
have fall birthdays, so we're all like
Oh,
a few days short of the next birthday.
that's awesome. We won't discuss how that came to be. 2 years apart. Never here.
Please.
Much appreciated.
So, well, I welcome you all. Thank you all for taking the time to get on. Dawson, you owe me. But the main thing I wanted to dive in as a starting point, at least, was, and Harrison, since you kind of were the initiator, well, maybe as a family, set the backdrop first, because I know there was some involvement with an awareness of the foster community before this started. But anybody want to paint that backdrop again, real quick, for what was going on in your family with the foster care system before you guys had this, before Harrison had his, desire to really encourage and motivate you guys to jump into it.
Yeah,
Did you want me
Kristen. Yeah, Kristen, you should take that.
We have a bunch of friends that did foster care, and I believe all of them were to adopt. We weren't looking to adopt. We were happy to be babysitters for them, to take care of their kids when they needed a doctor's appointment or vacation or whatever. So that kind of was we were like short-term respite for other families in the foster world.
Yeah, awesome. And how long was that going on?
Years. Yeah. I mean, years. I really thought it was only to adopt. I didn't realize the goal is reunification, but of course, adoption is needed sometimes.
Yeah. And yeah, on top of the, just need for families in between as well, even if, they're, before they find their family that is, eager to adopt. So that's awesome. Okay. So Harrison, this one, I guess, is going to go directly to you. What caused this urgency? Because it came across pretty powerfully when Mike first described it.
Yeah, I think initially it probably came from, I think all growing up, like our parents instilled us like pretty well of why we serve, especially being in the church, and why it's important. And then I remember there's always people at our house. Our parents were always looking out for other people, and especially what my mom was even saying with taking care of other kids, foster kids. I would say I had the same view, not knowing that there was just this short-term, or I guess long-term foster care, as it turned out to be in most of our cases. And then I remember hearing about it one time at school. There was like a chapel on it, and I don't know really what it was, but I think that would be cool. I think our family would be really good at it. And so I remember going home and telling my parents about it and saying, I think we should do this.
That's pretty awesome.
And it was received very well, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to validate that? Was it received really well, or was it?
It was 11 o'clock at night. Mike was asleep, and he comes in my room. He's like, we got to do this. And then he threw the Bible at us. So how do you say no to that?
Literally, or just started referencing it?
It just started
Both.
heaven.
Both.
I had like 7 of them, just chucking them.
That's awesome.
But it was good timing because he was like, "Oh, let's do this," and as soon as we did it, he left for college. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I was
Wait a
there for a
minute.
year.
I thought you were 15 at the time.
Well, the process takes a while.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then he was there for a year.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably a year and a half.
All right. So
Yeah.
there was no conversation amongst siblings, like, "Hey, this hit me, Harrison, and I want to talk to my siblings first," or I'm just coming home and throwing it at them.
No, I just threw it at him. Mackenzie was gone at the time. I think Mackenzie was, about to leave. And then, I don't know. My conviction isn't necessarily my siblings' convictions, I guess. So
Yeah.
That's
Have a-
fair.
All right.
we did have a family meeting where we sat down. I remember very specifically sitting in the living room and talking about it, and everybody was on board except Jackson, who said, "Mom's not going to be that nice, or as not going to be as nice." But he has turned out to. They've all been so helpful, so helpful.
Okay, so Jackson at least had a fear. Did anybody else have any fears?
I think so. I can't even remember. I don't even remember that conversation.
Really?
Was I there?
Yeah, you were there.
There.
Blocked it
I
out.
don't remember saying that, but what I do remember is my mom explaining that we were going to be helping kids who had like needs, and that could be like medical needs or whatever. And my middle school mind was like, "Oh my gosh, are we going to have kids that have like 3 arms?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do that." So
Sorry.
not necessarily the right heart, but I was on board.
That's awesome. Sorry, I wasn't expecting 3 arms.
Hey, I was, and not disappointed.
Yeah.
And what about you, Kristen and Mike? Did you guys feel the same? Like not too worried? Just already had a heart, obviously, to help with all the rest, but already.
Yeah, I think that well, with me, there was always, I'm the more conservative one. Kristen's like, let's do this, let's go. And I'm like, hold on a second here. Let's talk through this. Let's see what the kids say. And so then the kids were kind of on board at that point in time. And then, as we decided to kind of move to the next steps, then all the classes came and having to go, get licensed and so forth. And in true Kristen format, we did it in a week because we wanted to get it done right away and make sure that, we didn't take extra time and so forth. And so we got it done. But the questions that I ask are like, well, what if Kristen gets in a car accident, or, with the kids in it, who's responsible? So those are the questions that I started to ask. And the fear of, kind of extra stuff that might happen to us as a family. So those were kind of the items that we were that I was worried about. So Kristen wasn't necessarily, Kristen's not worried about anything first. So let's get that straight. But the impact on our kids too was another factor that we did talk about. So if we do have these kids at our house, what's going to be the impact on our kids, and how are they going to react, and what's going to happen to them? Are we going to do we have to treat them any differently than the foster kids, and so forth? And so as it turns out, it was, the kids really, really did step up. And I think probably have learned a lot, and you maybe even asked this, but they've learned probably more about parenting than they realize over the last 10 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Totally. And the fear of like taking care of someone else's child,
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
What if they get in a car accident,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I don't know if I say this, but I remember the first 2 kids we had that we are still very close with. In fact, they were in Mackenzie's wedding, but they were very difficult at first, and they were running around being pretty naughty. And I remember Mackenzie going, "This makes me know I'm going to spank my children." They were out of control.
That's awesome.
It was out of control.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Well, that to a degree leads to one of the questions I did have. Oftentimes when kids get excited about something, passionate about it, like, come on, let's do this. I think of let's have a dog. And then they're like, responsibility time comes and they're like, nope, sorry, that's you.
Yeah.
It sounds like they didn't back out or back away from any of the responsibilities.
They just all moved to San Diego. No, they were very helpful. They would, there's pros and cons to doing foster care when your kids are little, I assume, because you're still doing diapers and strollers and you still have cribs and you're not as tired. Like getting up in the middle of the night at 40 is a whole different ball game than when you're 20. But on the other hand, we had a little bit more money. We could afford to go out to dinner once in a while. We could, buy them cute clothes and stuff that we couldn't necessarily do when our bio kids were little. But also our kids were able to drive, so they could go to the grocery store and help us out, or I could go to the grocery store by myself and they would help out. So no, they were very helpful.
The kids stepped up. That's awesome. Give us a little bit of a clue what the process normally looks like when you guys decided to get involved and go through the process and be screened and go through all the training. What does it normally look like? You guys mentioned that you fast tracked it. How did that look?
So it was different back then. You were with an FA, which is a private agency, and that's why they were able to accommodate like work schedule, and they just did private classes for us. It was so fast. Generally, you go through the county. We are now with the county, and it was 24 hours of training, classes that they offer different nights of the week, weekends, different. They're being very accommodating now, and now they're doing.
Say that one more time. Now they're doing what?
They're doing the classes via Zoom during COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
So people still get licensed. There's still great for care. They have panels now that are foster parents or resource parents, which are foster parents, former youth that were in the system, and their perspective, and also reunified biological parents, what it's like from their perspective. And I think that's been the best thing they've added to the classes, because it really gives people an insight of why did they do this. Everyone knows it's wrong to do drugs when you're pregnant. And it gives a really good insight into each part of the system. They've just reduced the class by 8 hours. So now I think would that be 16? And you have to do CPR, thank you, Harrison, first aid, physical, TB test, and then they come and look at your house, make sure your things are locked up, alcohol, medications, knives. But it's pretty simple. People get really afraid of the house study, and it's just not a big deal.
And I would imagine if there's anything that's off, or for example, knives aren't locked up, as an example, they would advise like, hey, if you correct this, we'll come back and recertify you. Or...
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a warning. They write it up, and then because we had airsoft that weren't locked, I didn't know it was needed, and so yes, they come back and make sure they are.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, there's so much of an awareness. I think that if people knew more along the lines of, here are the steps and here's what it takes and here's some of the things, during that process you get to ask these questions and you find out, what the expectations are. It would be a lot less intimidating, but I don't see a lot of that information out there in places. I know I've looked for it quite a bit in different
That's true.
geographies. So
it's true. It is. They've made it much easier, much more streamlined.
It's very good.
Well, a lot of it too is that it's a lot of people that are going through the classes or some of the people that are going through the classes have relatives that are kids that are going to go into the foster system, and so they're taking the classes in order to get their brother's kids or uncle, or I don't know who it would be, but relatives of other people in the family that they're going to take their kids for them, so they have to go through the classes.
Yeah I know they prefer obviously to keep within the family when possible.
Yes.
So you got certified, you're good to go, you got the green light. First child, I think you said was more than one.
He was
correct? Was it
definitely more than one?
Was it 3?
Oh, no. It was a year and a half. But then we found out he had a brother who was 3 that was living at Costa Pacifica, which at the time was a group home. And so we were like, they need to stay together. And so we were able to get both of them together.
Okay, so it wasn't initially 3.
For a few days, we had one.
Okay.
And then we found out they had a sister, but she had a different father. So she stayed with her dad.
Okay. Did you say, sorry, for some reason the audio keeps coming in and out, so I apologize for asking you to repeat yourself. But did you say it was a year and a half from certification to the first child?
No, sorry. The little boy was a year and a half.
Oh, okay.
When I misunderstood your question.
Sorry. No, it's okay. I probably misasked it.
From certification to the first child, was a negative 8 hours, I think, wasn't it, honey?
That's
It
right.
was. We were not.
weren't even certified yet, and we got the call to get the kids. So
True.
Yeah, that's how big the need is, you know.
yeah, it's a huge need.
So if you're thinking about it, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're skipping ahead. Shh. Those are
my
my
bad.
closing questions.
You got that out.
But
No.
two turned into 3 pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Well,
I know you mentioned, and I forget, but Mike, you mentioned how your limit was it 4? You guys are approved for up to 4?
Yeah, we were approved for up to four children, and basically that was the initial thought was to keep families together. So if there were siblings, that they would all come at the same time. So if there's 2, 3, 4 siblings together, they would all be able to stay together with us at our house. So that was the initial thought. In this instance, though, it was yes, get the sibling there with us, and then our initial thought was we wanted to have a baby. So it was 0 to 2 years old, and this we didn't get that initially right away, and so they called us. I don't know how much longer, Kristen, was it that they called us for baby?
Can't say his name.
Couple months. Yeah, so 2 months later we had 3 kids in our house. So from certification to having 3 kids in our house was less than 3 months.
Well, and the first 2 were supposed to stay 6 to 9 weeks max, and ended up staying for 9 months, then leaving, then coming back for 4 more. That's pretty common, and the social workers aren't lying; they just don't know. Working with human variables, so
Yeah.
no way to determine.
Yeah. And so through that first, let's say, year, any fears arise then?
if you could deal with those first 2 kids, you can deal with any of them.
Yeah,
That's good to know. So nobody had second thoughts. Nobody was like, okay, we've done this for a year. That's enough.
Did you?
Yeah.
At that point, I was gone. I gotta be responsible.
Yeah. At the end of the day, Chad, it's Kristen is like, she's amazing with kids. And so, her life doesn't really change very much as a result of having a newborn or 4-year-old or what have you. I mean, she could have 3 or 4 kids. And yes, it changes, but she still keeps on doing what she would normally do. And so it takes a little bit longer to do it every single day, whatever she's doing. But she's amazing with the kids. And so as much help as me and the rest of the family gives her, she does, a lot of the heavy lifting for all of this. And so she's just a mom to, 100 kids now. So
Yeah.
Quite literally heavy lifting. She's surgery.
That's right. That's right.
I would not say a fear, but really learned a lot that first year. For example, the first 2 little kids that came were Hispanic, and I can't believe I didn't think of this, or that none of us did, or at least talked about it. But we were rolling out the red carpet, like let's eat in front of the TV, or let's have steak and Swedish pancakes. Let's feed them all of our favorite foods, and these kids just didn't eat. Well, that's weird. Well, 2 weeks in, we go to Lupe's, Mexican food. And the poor kids, like, scarf. They clean their plates. They clean my plate. They clean everybody's plates. And of course, they went home and threw up. But I starving these poor kids. So now, I've learned to call the parents the first night and say, what do they like to eat? What allergies do they have? What's your bedtime routine? Because their first question that they kept asking was, do you have chocolate? Do you have chocolates? And I didn't even know what they were saying. Called my sister-in-law who lives in Colombia, and she said, oh, they're asking if you have chocolates, which are leather sandals, because their culture, pretty typical to run around and hit the kids with the leather flip-flops. And so I'm like, oh no, honey, we don't have those. Like, we don't do that. But it was just to ask questions, and it makes the parents so much more comfortable knowing that, because they all go on and read about these crazy foster parents that are doing it for the money and they're going to keep their kids. And I've had more than one tell me that. And so it makes it everybody. If you can just, just call them and say, hey, what do you want me to know about your kid? Because it's still their kid. They made a mistake, they got caught, but it's still their kid.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Yeah. So obviously it helps having, you were at home, full-time mom, full-time, care of the home. Did you ever in the time so far, because you guys are still active, I don't want to make it sound like this has stopped, but have you guys ever had 4 all at once?
yeah. Got expanded, moved out. I think the most we've had at a time is 7.
Ooh. Yeah, that's an expansion.
Yes. One time. We probably won't do that again.
And for the record, you guys do have a say in that. You have the right to say that you're at your max at the moment, regardless of what you're authorized to do.
They can't give us more than our license. For a time, we were emergency shelter home, and at that point, you cannot say no.
Oh, okay.
But they 24/7, you have to be within 30 minutes of your home. And they changed some of the rules, and we said, yeah, we're out. For example, our kids live in San Diego and Hume Lake, and if we want to go see them, we had to put it in writing 2 weeks in advance, and we're like, we just don't live that way. So so we're not an emergency shelter, and yes, of course, we can always say no.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Rarely.
Yeah, no,
Has
for
mom
sure.
ever said no?
I have.
That should be the
When
next question.
I do. I said no last week.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yes, she did. Mom has a big heart, so she likes to say yes to a lot of stuff, and we're fortunate enough to be able to say yes to a lot of them. So it's good.
Yeah. So obviously, the younger, the younger siblings, you guys have been at home longer through it, and we're missing the youngest. So somebody can answer for him. Feel free. How has it changed, especially because you were exposed to it for the most length of time, or the longest length of time? But for all of you, I'd love to hear each of your inputs relative to how it changed you in that amount of time that you were living with it 24/7.
Totally. For me, I was basically immersed in it all of high school. And now that I'm living back at home, I'm back in it. But definitely what do I call him dad on the podcast?
Is Mike, Big Mike.
What mortgage Mike? Was saying is that it definitely really helped my parenting skills. Not that I am a parent yet, but
I was gonna say, do we need to share anything with your parents right now?
Yeah. Wait, are we recording? Yeah, for sure. For me, it was most of my high school years is when I was immersed in fostering in our family. And I'd say it definitely taught me a lot of parenting skills, especially as babies. One of the biggest ones being my mom gets babies like on a sleeping schedule, an eating schedule, and it really helps them like sleep throughout the night. And that's something that most parents do not do, I've found out, and that I will definitely be doing. And then definitely different things just about parenting. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely like kids more than adults. They're a lot easier to talk to, easier to entertain. I can just throw them in the pool, not the babies, of course. The ones who can swim, we can throw them, we'll play with them. They'll play.
Yikes.
What was that, Mom?
It wasn't me.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, they're just way more fun than adults. So, I mean, definitely being around kids was definitely a fun and enjoyable experience, as well as a good learning one.
Very cool. So obviously it sounds like you're looking forward to becoming a parent. Do you think you'll also become a foster parent someday?
Only the Lord knows.
Nice answer.
I can appreciate that.
I'm going to answer real quick because it has been, like Jackson said, kids are easier to talk to than adults. A couple of things kids are a good neutralizer. If we go somewhere with one of our babies or something, like conversations just start right up. But also our kids were really helpful, I think, in making the other kids feel more comfortable. Because, for example, we have a 17-year-old right now, and he doesn't want to sit and talk to me necessarily. But last night, Jackson just made him so comfortable. So I think it goes both directions.
That's awesome.
Totally.
Very cool. How about you, Dawson? You were home obviously quite a while.
Yeah. Oof. I would say like pretty much the same as Jackson, where it like teaches you a lot of different parenting skills, and you just like are able to play with the kids. Sometimes it gets annoying when they're like play, and but I really enjoyed it, and like helped me see how to like help kids out and like I guess parent them in a way, but not parenting them at the same time. And then taking care of babies. All my friends were always like, if I would like was watching a baby for a night or something, all my friends would be like, who let you watch the baby? But it like being around all of them so much, it was like just like a normal thing, and people are kind of shocked by it, but it's going to help in the long run whenever kids come someday.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, before Dawson had a girlfriend, he used to carry the babies all over church because it was a chick magnet.
The only reason he liked it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, Harrison, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say, I have to agree with everything that Jackson and Dawson have said. It definitely, I think in the long run will make us a better parent. I think the thing I learned the most, which was honestly probably the most beneficial, is watching how my parents, especially my mom, interacted with their parents and how important that was. I think it was really cool. I think probably the biggest, maybe not surprise, but probably the larger part of the ministry of foster care came from watching my mom interact with the foster kids' parents and even continuing those relationships past us not having their kids anymore. And I think that was really cool to watch and even learn from.
Yeah. Kristen, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know you guys, like you just mentioned, that some of your first kids were in your daughter's weddings. So do you want to kind of explain your philosophy around staying in touch? And
Yes, but I'm going to tell you what Mackenzie was going to say. The only what happened when she walked around with them is she got dirty looks because she was 17, 18, and typically we would be walking around together and we'd have a little baby, and it very much looked like she was a got
young
knocked
mom.
over.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then they'd ask me if I was a grandma. I was like, although I can't wait. Yes, a lot of foster parents, and no judgment, a lot of foster parents think, let's get these kids, let's rescue them from these parents that made bad choices, and help them. Our philosophy was, let's go a step further and let's get to know their parents, because yeah, they messed up and got caught, but we all mess up sometimes, right? And not that we're doing drugs, but we've all done dumb things, and it made us really grateful to be born to the families we were, that we had parents that taught us coping skills and taught us, instead of turning to drugs when you have stress, do this or whatever, taught us about the Lord. So we have stayed in touch with anyone that will let us. Just about everybody says they will. But then once they get their kids back, I think they want to forget that time in their life. And I think some of them maybe don't want their kids to ever know they were in the foster system, and that's okay, their choice. But the ones that let us keep in touch, we do. The first two little boys we had are now 11 and 12. 10 and 11. They just had a birthday. And they were in Mackenzie and Brian's wedding. And also a little girl that we had for about a year was a flower girl in her wedding. And we still see her also. And we just feel like the more people that love a child, the better. And if we can bring the parents to the doctor's appointment, bring the parents along the ride, it's better for the kids to see us communicating well, and it's easier. That way I can send them pictures during the day, like, look what your child is doing. Or at first I wondered if that would make them angry, but every single one of them has been really grateful and said it made it easier for them knowing their kids were being loved.
Yeah, that's super sweet. And obviously, it sounds like the majority of cases that you've been involved in have been, with some kind of, struggle with a substance or whatnot. But I imagine there's also cases where, they go through financial hard times, right? And, the, you know, the reality is they desperately need help.
Yep.
I like that philosophy of coming alongside. I totally get what you're saying about maybe, they want to kind of forget that time in their life. But I think that speaks a lot to how important it can be to come alongside for the long run, and keep a future occurrence from occurring again, right? So that's really powerful. I know in all the conversations I have with people who are involved in the foster community, it seems to everybody recognizes it, and we try and figure out how, but more of the preventative, whether it be preventing a reoccurrence or preventing it on the front side, seems like the more we could do to prevent, the actual occurrence from triggering a foster need. I don't know if there's ways for the counties and jurisdictions to identify some of those things ahead of time. Obviously, nobody wants to put themselves on the radar. Like, hey, I'm getting close, and if somebody would just help buffer me a little bit, we could avoid that. But I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
They're actually a program. I don't know if you want me to tell you about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Go ahead, please.
It's called Safe Families, and it's a wonderful program. We don't have it in Ventura County yet. Um, there are people working towards that, but it is for families who just go, "Hey, I need help, and my kid's about to be taken." And you work very closely with those families. It all goes through the evangelical church, not evangelical free church, but any church that is an evangelical church. It all goes through them, and these families just step alongside these other families, and they may take their kids for a couple months. They may just take them on the weekends. They give them a sounding board. It's a pretty cool program, and it's to prevent kids from going into foster
Yeah, that's
care.
fantastic. I have heard of Safe Families. I for some reason didn't think it was um, entirely private. So it's an entirely private. It's not connected to the county in any way, shape, or form. It's just through.
No,
Okay.
I do believe the social workers. There's no money involved, so there's no government involvement. But I do know there are social workers that kind of help connect,
Okay.
and then I think they. I haven't done it, but I have a lot of friends that have, and we have a friend that's the executive director up north.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to him,
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. We're always looking to talk to more people who are involved.
he's great.
And then I don't want to leave Mackenzie out either. But Mackenzie, how did all this affect you for the short time and every time you come back home and everything else? We heard a little bit, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, aside from the dirty looks that I'd get at the grocery store, it was fun to hang out with the kids. I mean, I was only there during summer vacations and holidays and stuff, but honestly, like bringing a baby to Christmas Eve, like lightened everyone's mood. So it's kind of an icebreaker, honestly. Um, but besides that, I think on a more serious level, like to learn more about how a baby's development is so impacted in their first months or year of life, like the pure just fact of having someone taking care of them physically is so important for their later development. And so I liked learning about that and realizing that this was bigger than just like a babysitting gig, like this was having an impact on their whole life. Um, and I think it also opened our eyes to so many different worlds that were so close to our hometown that we had just never encountered. So of course, like people who are living really different lives than we are, but also the Ventura County as an organization, we see there's so many flaws in it. There's so many like backlogs and people treated as files and all these things that kind of get us wired up. Um, so I think it really has shaped our family in a lot of ways. But been a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
We would always bring the kids down to volleyball. Mackenzie played volleyball, and so she always had a big cheering squad because we'd always bring the foster kids down.
Very cool. Very cool. And then, so same questions for anybody who didn't answer this yet, but has anybody kind of got that sense in their head, like, I definitely want to keep this involved as kind of like a family tradition as we start our own families down the road?
We're like, heck no.
I mean, man, we should know.
Cricket.
It's funny. I've always thought
awkward.
yes, and then I've always thought yes, and then but now I like actually am married and like could like think about this more, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's a lot. But yeah, down the road, I mean, definitely have thought about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say down the road, I think that's like for sure a possibility. I think I agree with like even how we did as a family. It was cool to have older kids, and it was cool to be older and to experience it. And so I think that would be important to have. For me, I'd want probably to have older kids, but also like even looking at it, like I think our parents weren't necessarily, I guess, fostering kids when we were younger, but people were always at our house. Our friends were always over, and it was always this open door policy of anyone can come over whenever, eat our food, you know, have a place to stay. And so I think that is even like the early stages of our family getting into it. And I think that's something that all of us are going to be a part of in our homes and our families later on.
Yeah. Just a cool culture to have grown up in.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking outside of even just the respite stuff with other people's foster kids or kids who are there working on adopting. Yeah, no, that's a very cool way to have structured your household. So I don't know. I'm trying to put myself in Mike and Kristen's shoes right now and think if my children were saying some of this stuff. I guess at this point in time I want to just hear real briefly from Mike and Kristen, like hearing what you're hearing from your kids. I don't know that you've ever had these conversations, intentionally before, but like, how are you guys feeling? Like, that's a pretty cool culture you instilled in them.
Well, I would say just that's all Kristen. I mean, the environment that she creates in the house, just the way that she decorates it, the way that her attitude is, and if it was just me, it wouldn't be an open door policy. It'd be like knock before you come in, but nobody knocks anymore. So I think
you funded it though.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
So hard. He works so hard so that we can have, extra Pop-Tarts sitting around for people to come. It is definitely a team effort for sure. This makes me, really happy to hear all this, but it is for sure a team effort.
Yeah.
All 6 of us.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
And Mackenzie's been great with the kids when he comes, and Dawson's girlfriend, like all the kids' friends are so good with the kids when they come over. It like, this sounds so dumb, but it warms my heart when their friends come over because they just grab the kids and play with them. And I think it makes the kids feel so special. I think one of the little girls that we just dropped off in Minnesota, I mean, she has the biggest crush on Jackson. And she just keeps talking about Dawson, like, no. But she just kept talking about him the whole way there. And it's just sweet because they made her feel special. And she's never had that before. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and I would also say this is that, the kids' parents, the foster kids' parents see this as well. And they're on guard at the beginning of kind of the drop-off phase and like, hey, you guys are taking my kid type of a deal. And they don't know what's going to happen. And then
it's for they'll say, I hated you at first, and I think I would have hated me too. I'm bopping off in my red Jeep with their kids, and it's the worst. Yeah. I hate that part. And Mike's been there when we picked up from a visit, and you basically have to strap their kids in and be like, bye, we're taking your kid now. And we're not the ones taking them, but we're the middleman.
Yeah, but they see how our family interacts, and that it helps them feel way more comfortable about where their kid is going.
Yeah, except the mom that had a crush on Dawson. She still asks me about him.
Watch out, Claire.
um, yeah, I don't know if you're going to get into this, but a really good way for people to start if they wanted to is just doing respite. I know it's like Mackenzie's saying, it's a lot, and it is a lot, and it's hard, and it's also really fun and wonderful and really horrible and all of that. But respite is great. And when Mike said I don't say no, I love to do respite because respite is a set time frame, right? They say, I'm going out of town. I'm going to be on vacation from August 3rd to August 15th, and I need someone to watch my foster child, because anybody can watch a foster child for a day, but if it's over that, you need to have someone that's licensed. And so not only is it a good step into it because you're seeing what it's like but when it's going to end. But not only that is when we had those first two and they were hard, we had a vacation plan to Mexico. And I thought, well, shoot, now we're going to have to cancel it, or take them with us. And we didn't want to take them with us. Like, we were going with another family and we wanted to have a vacation. And someone I didn't know did respite for us. And it was wonderful. And at that point, I said, I will always do respite for anyone that asks if I'm able to, because we loved so much that someone did that for us. And I just think if I'm able to do respite for someone, I can do anything for a week. And that is what I have a hard time saying no to, because I do want to help other people. And one more point on respite is you take different ages. We were only going to take 0 to 5. And really, we only wanted newborns, but we did respite for some teens and loved it. I mean, teens wipe their own butt, it's like, and we had great conversations with them, and we were able to really talk to them. They hadn't had people that had really talked to them before. So it opened our eyes, and now we take any age, 0 to 18. And it's a good way to get your feet wet.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about, Mike referenced this in our first conversation, how parenting has to be a little bit different, playing by the rules as a foster parent versus how you would necessarily parent your own child. And you just alluded to it a little bit earlier about, some of these realizations triggered some thoughts in Mackenzie, like, I'm definitely going to spank my child.
I got spanked plenty of times.
You deserve it.
The last time Dawson got spanked, he looked up at Mike and said, "That's all you've got?" That it was over after that. Yeah, you definitely have to follow the state's rules, and that's what you sign up for. So you have to get very creative. We had these twin 3-year-olds that were just hell on wheels, and they were so hard. And I'd put them in
They were my favorite.
yeah, because you got to leave. They were horrible. But you realize what they came from, and of course they are horrible. A lot of this is because their parents' fault. But you still need to teach them right from wrong, and you still need to have some rules. But I'd put them in a timeout chair, and they would literally give me the finger and say, "I'm not sitting there," and get up and run around. So what do you do with that? So we got pretty creative, brought their car seat in, strapped them in their car seat, buckled it, and put them in the middle of the kitchen floor and said, "You need to sit there for a little bit." And that worked. They gained a respect that went, "Oh, there's a consequence to when I'm naughty." And we got along really well after that.
Interesting. Yeah. So creativity,
Yeah.
that's a good tip.
Kids do, contrary to popular belief, they want to know how far they can push it.
Oh yeah, certainly. Every child will always look for the boundaries.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any feedback on that experience? Not necessarily those particular children, but in general, the observation of the different means of discipline or rules.
We heard a number of times, "You're nicer to them than you were to us."
That's true.
Right. Lucky for you, you had good parents.
Yeah. Well, I would say, that there's, Kristen talked about a little bit earlier, like there's kids that are being raised, like a family of 3 or 4 kids are being raised by their grandma, who is, 60 years old, and they have higher, I mean, older. I don't know what her age was, but I mean, they were, you know, 3, 5, and 10 or something like that. And a 67-year-old lady cannot discipline or keep up with those kids. And so they rule the roost at that house. And so when they come over to our house, they don't necessarily rule the roost at our house. So, but you have to, like Kristen said, you got to figure out ways to um, control them a little bit differently than you would our kids. Because when we say no to our kids, they got to a point where it's like, okay, no is no, and we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Except for Dawson. But no, but those types of things we do differently, but it's just the way that they've grown up. It's all they know, and so they don't know any different that they have guidelines.
Well, and I would say, the three that he's talking about, they were actually 1.5, 4, and 6, and their grandma was close to 80. But it's easier for us because we're not emotional. I mean, we love these kids and we bawl our eyes out when they leave, most of them. But she was their grandma. Like, that's hard, right? Because I mean, we don't have grandkids, but from my friends that do, they said, oh man, you just love them more than anything. And so that it's harder, I think, for her to maybe lay down the rules because these are her grandkids, and probably culturally she wants to spoil them and just enjoy them and not have to be their parent, and yet she's in a position where she does have to be their parent.
Yeah.
So I feel for that.
Yeah. I'd love to get just kind of essentially final thoughts from all of you, and we can start with Dawson and work our way up the food chain. And Mike and Kristen, you can lie about who's older and be the senior speaker.
Kristen will go last.
So, but I just would love to kind of hear essentially from each of you, if you were having a conversation with somebody who's completely unaware of what the need is, what it's like to be part of it. You've seen both, obviously as kids, you've seen both what it's like to be a kid alongside these kids, as well as what it's like to parent them and observing your parents. And then obviously, Mike and Kristen, you guys have the parental view, as well as, some of the more deeply, you probably got, I don't know, maybe everybody had exposure to it, but I imagine you guys had a bit more deep exposure to what the, some of the legal side and the system side of things are. I don't know if you want to share any of that. I think we shared some of it, but just, what do you want to express to anybody who's completely unaware of, the experience and or the need? Dawson, we'll start with you.
I would say that if you don't know anything about it, there's a lot to learn about it. And if you're interested in doing it, to go for it. And like, if your kids are older, like how we were older, I think they will really enjoy having kids around, just because it's like a good distraction to like play with them sometimes or hang out with them. It's also a great learning experience to, like we said earlier, get better like parenting skills or stuff like that. So if you're I would say if someone's looking into it, definitely go for it.
Very cool. Are any of you currently still like almost in that big brother, big sister kind of mentorship role with anybody still?
For sure they are. With the two first ones that we had, like anytime they come over, they want to call all of them and they want to, they ask what they're doing. And if anybody's home, they are, yeah,
that's awesome.
Very much so, especially those first two.
Very, very cool.
Those two recently got Instagrams and TikToks, and you will DM them and they will talk to you. And it's the most awkward conversation you'll ever have over text. But like,
it's the best.
It's like, it's like they'll send like a pizza emoji, and then you'll send like, oh, like, did you have pizza for dinner? And it'll just be like a cake emoji. And then it's like a thumbs up, and then like something random, and then you text them and they'll call you and it'll just be like, okay, like happy birthday, okay, like thanks, and like still teaching them communications and like I guess still being the big brother is what it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Jackson, my
Jackson,
turn.
yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say to anyone looking into it, it's green light it for sure. I think it's a win-win-win on all sides of the party if your heart's in it. Um, Definitely, it's obviously helping. I mean, obviously, if you're taking care of the kids, it's good for the kids, it's good for your family, it's good for the parents. Um, like my mom was saying, respite is always a good way to start. Get your foot in the water. Uh, but overall, I definitely say it's like a great experience. Not just with foster care, but just like in our house. What am I trying to say? I mean, I think like generosity, kindness, empathy are all kind of like muscles. The more you work them out, the more you're immersed in them, the easier they get, the stronger they grow. Um, I definitely think foster care was one of those big workouts kind of to those things. And definitely being instilled in it within our family has been very helpful in my own life. Uh, and definitely whenever foster care comes up, like, oh, our family does foster care, everyone's always like, oh my gosh, you guys are such saints. Like, I could never do that. But to me, it's like, it's very normal just being immersed in it. And I think our family has set the bar very high for ourselves um, on that. And I think going into my future, um, if not foster care, other forms of generosity and kindness are going to take place because of foster care and because of being immersed in this.
Yeah. That's pretty profound. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd say to anyone interested in it, it's definitely like, I wouldn't necessarily tell them it's easy because it's not. But it has been some of the best experiences I think of for us as a family, and we have so many fun stories and cool stories and funny stories. But at the same time, there's times where you kind of hate it also. It isn't always easy. It isn't always fun. It isn't always like, oh, mom's going to the grocery store, I got to watch the baby, and the baby cries and the baby poops, and what teenage boy wants to change a diaper? Granted, I'm grateful for it now, but at the time you're not always like, oh, this is awesome. And so I think in that, like, there is times where it is the best, and there's also times where it's not fun. I mean, there's times where mom's driving an hour or plus a day to take a kid to the hospital for visits, and that's hard. In the same way that it took our family as a team to do it, it also took all of our friends and family to help us out along the way. And so I think encouraging people that not everyone is called to be a foster family, but maybe to support. And we have countless, I mean, my mom especially has countless amount of friends that come over and we'll just watch the kids real quick, or even saying that so many of our friends, they come over and they just hang out with the kids. And I think that is super beneficial for us as a family it even gives us a break to not honestly have to play with the kids. Or, our church congregation did such a good job at, pouring into those kids' lives as well, and being excited for them and praying for them and looking out after them. And so it takes a whole army. It takes a ton of people to look after the kids, to look after the people who are looking after the kids. And so I think you can be involved in foster care in many different ways. It doesn't just necessarily mean being a foster family. And I think that it's been cool to watch. I think the reach of getting people interested in foster care hasn't stopped at our immediate family, but our friends as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I would say, well, one of the benefits of it, I feel like it's expanded our family by so many. Like when I think of our family, I don't just think of like the six of us. I think of like endless amounts of kind of random babies, which is funny. But yeah, but it is really fun to meet so many different little personalities and experience that. But I would also tell people who are thinking about fostering, I would strongly recommend them looking into being a CASA worker as well. It's another really important side of the system where the kid gets someone to actually help advocate for them in court, and who's going to be really like more of a one-on-one mentor for that kid. And that we have some friends who do that, and that's just another like life-changing way to help. But you aren't like taking kids into your own house, you're more just kind of meeting with them. And I don't know, Mom, you probably know more about this, but I think seeing that and learning about that position is another really impactful way that if you don't want to have different kids living with you, you can still really benefit different children.
Dawson, you have to take that down. Sorry, because he can't show. He's really cute, but he can't show. Sorry.
Awesome.
Love it, bro.
I will say, it's always an interesting conversation starter when someone asks you how many siblings you have.
Totally.
I was like, well, technically 3, but like kind of 100.
Legally, yeah. And so since I'm younger than Kristen, I'll go now. Yeah. No, I would highly encourage people to get into this, and I would, but before they get into it, I would want to make sure that they get into it for the right reasons. And we've seen a lot of different, I guess, socioeconomic people or families or whatever. We've learned a lot about our community and who's in our community and how we can impact our community. And it's very interesting to kind of the relationships that especially Kristen creates with their parents is amazing. And it's people, it's just people, and they're different than us, but they're people. And so, like Kristen said, they made mistakes, but it's interesting getting to know them and talking to them and learning about their lives and what they've had to go through and so forth. And I'd also say, like Harrison said, is not easy. It's fun having a baby when the baby is there playing and smiling and crawling around and running up to you when you come in the front door, and all those things are super, super fun. But it's hard. It's hard saying goodbye to the kids. It's just a lot of work all the way around. Yeah, no, it's hard, and yet it's fulfilling at the same time. And so one of our initial kids that we had, it was we had to give him to another foster family in another county, and basically I said, you won't love this kid as much as I will. And the thing is that they loved him just as much as we did. And so it's our heart that we have for foster care and foster kids, and we love them like they are our own kids. And that makes it really difficult in the long run. But it's worth it. So they don't remember us if they're babies. And so that's hard, but it's also good for them as well to kind of like, they're moving on and they're to another family that is going to love them, whether it's their own family or another foster family that's going to adopt them. And we're just that stopping point for them. And like Mackenzie said earlier, is that we've had a lot of babies, and that initial year or initial 6 months that we can give them, that is the foundation for them, is something that I think our whole family has done well.
Yeah, it's so much development in that time.
I need to go off that a little bit. Just like a lot of babies, when they come to us, are like they're unhealthy and they're like stressed. Like they can tell something's wrong when they're being like thrown around from house to house, or if like something's going on in the house that they're living in. And a lot of times you can really tell from the like physical appearance. Like some of them really come and they have like blemishes, or they're like, they don't look healthy. I don't want to say ugly, but sometimes they're ugly. And then after spending like a good amount of time at our house in like a safe, loving, strong environment, like you can tell the difference just in their physical appearance. And they're like 3 months old, like nothing changed. Like they can't speak anything, but they just know that they're not stressed, and their body knows they're not stressed, and they look a lot healthier when they leave. They look happier. Not to say that we're like an amazing, magical family house, but we're definitely like a safe environment for these kids. And like he was saying, like it's a strong foundation that they may never know about. They may leave our house when they're 6 months old, but we definitely made an impact that they might not be able to ever speak of, ever really know of, but we know we did it.
Yeah.
And we helped as much as we could.
Yeah.
There's a
Way better than I did.
and Mike, when we're crying because someone left, and he'll be like, why do we do this? We all feel it, and he's willing to say it, but it's true. Just like Jackson and Mackenzie said, there's so much research on it that their brains, the chemistry in their brain, the connections in their brains, they will never know who we are. But it doesn't matter, because now they have a chance at life. They have a chance at learning. They have a chance at not having better connections in their brain because they were loved, just because they were loved and fed.
And maybe we got them out of that cycle of life that their family, their mom, their grandma, their dad, whoever it is that, they had to, that under, circumstances that we don't ever know about, or can't understand, that hopefully we get them out of that cycle as a result of them being at our house.
Yeah, man. And I can't help but think, and maybe this is the, I guess the hopeful side of me for all kinds of things, but I just can't help but hope or pray that someday you guys get to see, when you're in heaven, what the spread of that fruit actually is.
But it's okay if we don't.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It is.
But man, would that be something to finally realize?
That'd be fun. But it's our friends too in our community. Like Harrison said, the kids that come are so loved, and it isn't just because of us. It's because of the church and the friends and our family and our relatives, and everybody loves on these kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would hope that I hope everybody gets to see, right, where their reach went, because we don't obviously get to see it in our lives very, very often. So that's a pretty beautiful thing. You may have shared some of what you were going to share, but do you have more to add, Kristen?
Well, you asked something about the legal side. Was there something that the legal side's a mess, but is there something that you...
I didn't have anything in specific in mind, other than, as you mentioned the process of becoming certified, but I don't know if there's, as a foster parent, how much you see or get involved in the mess. Obviously, other than awareness. And I know you guys spend a lot of time advocating for, change and the such, but if somebody were not involved in that, is it something that is going to be a struggle too? Or, just kind of, if there's a way to paint a high level picture there.
Yeah. So it is a struggle, and I don't want to sound bitter. I'm just going to say the fact is the court doesn't care what the foster parents, resource parents. We don't have a say. It's unfortunate because we know the kids better than anybody. We have them 24/7, and we know the bio parents better than anybody. Because we spend time with them, and they tell us all kinds of things that they don't tell anybody else. And so it's unfortunate. There are some good lawyers that I've worked with in LA County that have started realizing that, and that will call and say, hey, what do you think? Or what about this? What about that? What did they tell you? What do you know? But generally speaking, they're overworked lawyers. There's a couple in Ventura County for all the cases. And so, it's unfortunate because you can't possibly get to know the kids and their cases when you have thousands or hundreds of. So that is something we're advocating for.
Is that something that a CASA would alleviate? If there were a whole bigger pool of CASAs, would that alleviate that?
CASAs would help. CASAs do help, but CASAs don't have any power.
Okay.
CASAs are wonderful for the kids. CASAs are wonderful to have someone advocate for, especially the older kids. I've never had a baby that had a CASA because they don't have any power in court. They are feel comfortable in court, advocate for them. But Yeah, and they're wonderful. And you cannot be a CASA and a foster parent at the same time. It's a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
I have lots of friends that have been CASAs that fell so in love with the kids that they then stopped being a CASA and became a foster parent. So, but both are so needed, and different, depending on what's in your wheelhouse, a different route, but both equally.
Chad, I think what Kristen was trying to say earlier is that there's anywhere from 800 to 1,200 kids in the foster system in Ventura County at any given point in time, and there's 2 to 3 attorneys that represent all of those kids, and there's no possible way that any attorney could know every case of 300 to 500 kids at any one time and be able to represent them appropriately. Yeah. Without asking questions of the resource families, foster families, parents, and so forth. So that's a frustrating part for us.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's organizations like Raising Hope that are trying to change that. So you never know.
Yeah. Keep praying for positive results for sure.
Awesome. Is go to court. I go every time they have a court case because that's the only way I learn and get the information. But it's certainly not required. It's certainly not a necessary thing. I just like to know what's happening with the kids and their case.
Yeah. Wow.
So we could talk for hours, but I'm sure your listeners.
No, there are going to be people whenever they hear, this, once it's out there, it's out there. So whether people hear this in the next week or in the next, 5 years, God has a way of bringing the right ears at the right time to these things, and more than happy to go into even another conversation at another time and kind of dive into any of the nitty gritty if that's something that you guys would be interested in. Our mission has a lot to do with the foster system as well, so it fits our niche perfectly. I'm more than happy to talk for hours because I think the information, the more it gets out, the better. But today, and the objective of trying to get the feedback of the kids and what it was like, I'm so grateful for everybody's time, and we won't talk about how many times we were online and offline and had to get back together, but I appreciate everybody's patience too.
Thank you, Chad.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you guys. We'll talk very soon, and I hope you have a wonderful night. And man, it's just cool to see you guys together. Hope you guys had a little bit of fun catching up. I know you guys are spread everywhere.
Perfect. Mom, we didn't hear any of that, but it's okay.
We can know what she said. She said we don't Zoom without this, so.
Well, and I have a reason to Zoom more often.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
All right.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye.